Hi everyone, and welcome to month 7 of our 12-month chess improvement challenge. We are over halfway done, and I hope you've gained a lot of great experience so far this year by focusing on different areas of your chess. But there's still more to come, so let's jump right in. Last month, we worked on some in-game techniques for improving time management. Whether you have a tendency to play too fast or too slow, time management is something you can continue to work on in your games moving forward. If you're able to keep up the good habits you worked on last month, it will be easier to focus on other aspects of your thought process. And one of those aspects is our topic for this month: calculation. If you'll remember, in month 5, we trained tactics, and I like to think of this as kind of an extension of that pattern recognition. Finding patterns in chess reduces the mental bandwidth you need to hold different parts of a position in your mind when you're calculating. Calculation is the process of visualizing sequences of moves in advance of actually making a move. The better you get at chess, the longer sequences you'll be able to visualize. Part of calculation is picking candidate moves, which are just potential moves that you can make in a position. Then you have to think ahead to figure out which one of these moves is the best, meaning which will result in the best outcome for you. Outcomes could be something super strong, like checkmate or winning material, or they could be something a little more simple, like better piece placement. Part of calculation involves being able to predict the moves your opponent is most likely to make. You can't just think about all the moves that you want to make without considering your opponent's best responses. I think this is something that a lot of beginner and intermediate chess players tend to struggle with. And even I still find myself doing this sometimes. I'll think of a sequence, and if you ask me to tell you the particular moves I'm thinking of, I'd say, well, I want my rook here and my bishop there and my queen there, and then, if they do nothing, then I'll checkmate them. But of course, they're not going to just sit around and do nothing. They have moves too. One solution I found to this problem, which I've talked about before in this series, is just simply asking the question, what is the most annoying thing my opponent could do in this position? Or another way of wording this is, what would I do if I was my opponent right now? This can help you to find their best defenses and even spot counterattacks. Often our best laid plans go awry when our opponent spots a devastating check. If you've heard of the mantra, checks, captures, threats, that's not only a good way to spot tactics of your own, but also to find your opponent's best moves. You can ask yourself, do they have any checks? Do they have any captures? What are they threatening in this position? Another part of calculation is the ability to evaluate final positions. Often you'll have to calculate sequences that don't necessarily win you material, but they may result in improving or worsening your position in some other way. Understanding the basics of what makes a good position really comes from just playing a lot of games and studying a lot of master games. Remember way back in month 3 when we were studying the games of master players? This is a good opportunity to go back to the games that you compiled that month and take a look at things like piece placement and pawn structure. For example, your chosen master probably avoided doubling their pawns or creating backwards pawns. They probably put their rooks and bishops on open lines and like to jump their knights into outposts in their opponent's camp. So when you're calculating and then evaluating in your own games, this might come back to help you realize that, okay, at the end of this sequence with this candidate move, I'm able to get an outpost knight in my opponent's position, or I'm able to ruin my opponent's pawn structure and make them have doubled pawns. And that all comes back to that pattern recognition piece. You can use those basic concepts as shortcuts to understand which move results in a better position for you when the outcome isn't so clear. So how exactly are we going to train our calculation? This is something that can happen in both the training cave and in our actual games. So the challenge is to do both this month. While we previously trained tactics with easy puzzles, this month we're going to step it up and do some of those harder puzzles. There are intermediate or advanced books out there, and you can also use online tools like, for example, the rated puzzles on chess.com, which should theoretically be like the hardest kinds of puzzles that you at your level are able to solve. The best way to make the most out of your training is not to rush through these difficult puzzles. Again, this is different than the pattern recognition training we did before. And if you find yourself struggling not to just click or, guess and check, you can do the thing where you set a timer for 5 or 10 minutes and then sit there and force yourself to think about the puzzle for that entire amount of time, find a bunch of candidate moves, calculate them as far as you can all the way until the end, and then actually find the right solution. If you can do at least a few minutes of this intense calculation practice every day, it's really going to give your mind a good workout. If you play over the board, this is also a great opportunity to kind of simulate that tournament environment by setting up puzzles on your actual physical board and looking at it from that vantage point. Even better if you can set up a clock next to your board and really simulate that environment, because you're not going to have infinite time in a real classical game. So as far as actual games, we're going to practice calculation using longer time controls, rapid or classical, and structure our thought process. Choose your candidate moves and then be sure to calculate them out as far as you can until that final position where there's no more trades, no more checks, captures, or threats. And then remember, when you reach that furthest end of that sequence, push yourself to just look one move further. Often that will help you find your opponent's best responses and help you understand which candidate move is going to have the best outcome for you. This is going to take a lot of brain power this month, but I promise that the more you practice, you'll be able to calculate longer and longer sequences. And most importantly, in your actual games, you'll feel comfortable diving into that longer calculation phase that is a requirement to become a better chess player. As always, feel free to share any books or resources that you found helpful for training calculation down in the comments. And if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe. I will see you soon.